En cette journée particulière pour notre
This is a special day for our university, and it's my honor to welcome the former President of the Confederation, President of the Council of State, President of the Grand Council of Geneva, ambassadors, general consuls, members of parliament, representatives of the federal, cantonal, and communal authorities, members of the international community, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of the ecclesiastical organizations, representatives of universities and other institutions of higher learning, members of the teaching, research, and student bodies of the University of Geneva, dear guests. Once again, we are opening our Dies Academicus with music. This year, the theme of our day is globalization and human rights. This should not and is not a day where the university celebrates itself. We want to dedicate it to all those men and women who, here and elsewhere, make our university known, whether through their past achievements, their present commitment, or the promises they hold. They are the ones that our ceremony today aims to honor. We want to honor them, celebrate them, and introduce them to you, members and friends of the University of Geneva. But first, let me give the floor to Dominique Bellin, who's going to speak to us on behalf of the University Assembly.
Mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, the Assembly has not yet elected its president, so it's the eldest member who appears before you today. We will manage, I assure you. With the beginning of the third term on the 1st of September, we enter the home straight in the implementation of the 2008 University Act. Drafted by a committee chaired by Mrs. Dreyfus on a mandate from the State Council, this act the simplified law gives increased autonomy to the university, reinforces its executive, the rector's office, the dean's office, and gives participation and maintains participation for all. It was adopted by the Grand Council and approved by the Supreme Body after a lively campaign. It confers nearly no operational activities to the participatory instances, but gives them one essential task, which is to appoint the rector and the deans of the faculties. The Assembly has exercised this responsibility once for the first time, reappointing Mr. Vasily for a second term, which had not happened for 30 years. 45 members of the Assembly are now going to appoint the next rector in collaboration with the Strategic Planning Board. Of course, the Council of State will have the last word in designating the rector. This will be a difficult task, and the person chosen will have to have the respect and the trust of the Assembly. The person will be necessarily from an academic field and will have to have at heart the strength of the University in Geneva and its universalist vocation. We want to avoid a hasty decision with emotions holding sway, and the process will therefore take time. And we think it's important for the final decision to meet with the approval of the greatest possible number of members of the Assembly. This is a long-term and time-consuming activity. We regret that only a few people take part in university elections when they are held. I would like to welcome the civic spirit of past and present members of the participatory councils. I think students often have to spend too much time earning their living, and the assistants are justly more concerned about their research and their professional life. Members of staff are too rare to it's too rare for them to take part in this assembly. The professors will often be in their laboratories or their libraries. But participation gives people the opportunity to influence the course of events. It is a place where people can meet and understand other points of view. This diversity of perspectives brings greater richness, and it takes on full meaning when disciplined curiosity, disciplined by scientific rigor, and the pursuit of excellence become characteristics shared by all. The Act creates a new way of working and thinking about the future. The Rector's Office and the Federal Department of Education are working on the basis of a convention, an agreement, but defining it will be important that this provides the means to carry out the agreement. A recent visit to, but it would be dangerous to think that because things have been done in the past, they should continue to do. A recent visit to the Sainte-Chapelle showed me strikingly that maintaining heritage is as important as innovation. I will finish by a word about recent rankings of our university in the world. We moved from 130th to the 70th place, and I think this shows how relative these figures are. University's work is a long-term project, and our temporal scale is far beyond an annual ranking. The quality of a university can be measured through the professional success of its graduates and the transmission of thought which is rigorous and demanding in a climate of emulation and calm, and the influence and notoriety of its professors and the quality of the research. Perhaps we should also include the quality of personal development of its members, their fulfillment, and why not, their happiness.
Merci, Dominique Bollin. Je demande maintenant à Madame Antonella.
Thank you, Mr. Bellin. I would now like to ask Madame Antonella Notary-Vischer, alumna 2013 of the University of Geneva, to come and join me at the podium. For the second time this year, our Association of Alumni have decided to make an award to the alumnus or alumna of the year. This year, the Executive Committee of the Alumni of Geneva have chosen Madame Notary-Vischer. The Rector's Office heartily welcomes this decision. This award is for Madame Notary-Vischer's life work. She earned her BA here at the University of Geneva and then spent 18 years at the International Committee of the Red Cross, most of it in the field and in crisis areas, and also for her unconditional commitment to the Womity Foundation, which she has directed since 2000. It is a foundation whose purpose is to promote equal opportunities for men and women. Madame Vischer, you have the floor. Ladies and gentlemen, dear family, dear friends, given the brief speaking time I have been given, I'm sure you will forgive me if I skip the formal greetings. I'm very honored to be designated Alumna of the Year, and I thank the University of Geneva for this award. I must be humble and pay tribute today to those who have made it possible for me to make my dreams and aspirations come true. My literature studies at the University of Geneva 30 years ago gave me a solid foundation for going out into the world. Through my reading, my thinking, writing, exchanges and debates that I had here, I acquired knowledge which broadened my horizons and gave me the idea of working for justice and peace. Ingeborg Bachmann, whose poetry was the subject of my bachelor's thesis, said,
Et encore,
and
hätten wir das Wort, hätten wir die Sprache, wir bräuchten die Waffen nicht.
In other words, if we had words, if we had language, we would no longer need weapons. My contribution has been very modest, but I'm proud that it's an integral part of a great humanistic wave that is driving many women and men here in Geneva and elsewhere throughout the world. Today I'm working for women and girls who are underprivileged so that they can learn, work, take part in public life, and realize their own aspirations in safety and freedom. Achieving the right for women to be considered free and equal is a way of promoting human rights and ensuring progress for societies. Sustainable progress requires full participation of girls and women in public life, and their contribution needs to be valued. Our solidarity with those who fight for their right to exist and to carry out their life plans is critical, because our fate is intertwined with theirs, and we can only move forward if we move forward together. I would like to dedicate this award that you are honoring me with today to my late mother, Fermina, who, with great simplicity but great courage, always spread joy and friendship around her and always believed that her daughters could do whatever they chose to do. Thank you very much. Madame Notary Vischer, thank you very much for your kind words, and once again, congratulations for your nomination as Alumna 2013. Now, I'm going to call not one but two assistants from the Faculty of Law. Their commitment to their institution is great, but they are also behind a remarkable initiative for the poorest of the poor, the Law Clinic, which promotes the rights of the most vulnerable. I would like now to call Madame Olivier Lefort and Madame Jamila Caron onto the stage to present, in a few words, their remarkable program. Rector, ladies and gentlemen, dear students, we are delighted to have this opportunity today to address you about the Law Clinic for Vulnerable People's Rights. Making students aware of human rights issues, creating synergies with the university and the city, serving the most vulnerable, that is our project, which has a local focus, and it's a very local focus because this year we are dealing with the rights of people that we regularly meet in the area which separates the two buildings of our alma mater, the Plaine de Pin Palais. The Law Clinic on the Rights of Vulnerable People is an innovative course of study offered to master students at the Faculty of Law. The program's aim is to draft a brochure informing a specific vulnerable population of its rights. For the first year, we decided to focus on Roms, in inverted Romas, in inverted commas, who are living here in precarious situations in Geneva. We use the inverted commas because the characteristics attributed to these people don't seem to withstand sociological analysis. The Law Clinic combines seminars, working sessions, and group research work. The students selected have exchanges with external partners and have been out onto the field to see the situation firsthand. But their energy has mainly been focused on drafting a brochure, which is a question and answer format. One question is, for example, am I allowed to build a shelter in a public area? The answer is no, I am not entitled to build a shelter, whatever kind of shelter, in a public area. Law Clinic research has clarified this legal situation of the target population. For example, we have realized that social assistance is practically inaccessible for these people, although technically they have the right to it. In addition, the principle of proportionality, which is the most basic principle that the authorities should uphold, is not always honored by the Geneva police. The results of our research show that the accumulation of these different restrictions force Romas in precarious situations in Geneva to live as a marginal population. They sleep under bridges. They are forced to beg and depend on outside help for their most basic needs, which makes it difficult to live with dignity, and every human being has the right to live with dignity. Having said that, we have now come up with simple and feasible proposals. The opening of emergency shelters, the Civil Protection Department's shelters all year long is one of them, and we also have a Roma mediator. Our first brochure is going to be published at the end of the month, and our students, whose enthusiasm is ongoing, will then provide information sessions for people involved. in coming years, we want to work on the rights of detainees, the rights of the elderly, the rights of all the population when in their dealings with the police, and the rights of the undocumented. The list could go on, but we will start next semester with migrant women. Above and beyond these brochures on vulnerable populations, the Law Clinic makes it possible to put the human being back at the center of academic research. More generally, this teaching strengthens the idea of a society which will be less discriminatory, more egalitarian, and informs individuals of their rights. Because all people, Romas or not Romas, with or without papers, Swiss or not Swiss, men or women, vulnerable or not vulnerable, have the right to respect for their dignity and their rights. Thank you.
Mesdames, je vous remercie de...
Thank you very much for describing your project, which I think reflects the join between the university and service to our citizens, whoever they may be. I thank you on behalf of our institution. Ladies and gentlemen, what an excellent tradition leading me to my topic for this morning. In 2012, we invited you to a ceremony that was dedicated to knowledge as it contributes to human rights. This year, we're working under the theme of globalization and human rights. At the close of the Human Rights Week that many members of our university have taken part in collaboration with the Federal Department of Foreign Affairs, the State and City of Geneva, as well as the Martin Ennals Foundation. In etymological terms, the word university, Universitas Magistrorum et Scholarum in medieval language, answers to several definitions. It's the establishment of a body of professors and students, implying that it works in isolation, closed off to any consideration of what happens outside its walls. I prefer another vision, the vision of an open community, a community which is open to the city that it belongs to, the city which has taken care to support it for a very long time. The many opportunities to meet with the public that mark our academic year, and which Dies Academicus is only the high point, are the best testimony to this. Today, opening up to this city, which is the city we live in, is no longer enough. Our university needs to look beyond its natural geographic boundaries to place its attention on issues which are important in today's globalized world, a world where boundaries are no longer those set by nations during the 20th century. The growing globalization of trade, the recurring emergence of conflicts which engulf entire regions have led to a reshuffling of the cards and to a redistribution of political and societal commitment and engagement, which is no longer the private preserve of diplomats or experts in conflict management. The 11th of September 2001 saw a tragedy which revealed how outdated our conventional approaches to modern geopolitics were. However, the extremely fast development of communication does not enable us to remain deaf and blind to human suffering around the world, to the repeated violation of human rights and disdain for their lives. We cannot remain indifferent. Our world has always been complex, and it will become more so in the future. If we want to understand it in its wholeness, we have no other choice but to draw on the knowledge and expertise that we have in our institution amongst the professors, researchers, and students. And if we want to draw on this as we should, we need to mix this knowledge and practice interdisciplinarity. Isn't the dialogue between fields of teaching and research part of University of Geneva's historical heritage? Our founding fathers already had the intention of bringing together law, medicine, theology, and scholastics. Today, interdisciplinarity is no longer just an option. the convergence of scientific fields such as interpretation, international relations, law, and molecular biology make it an absolute necessity. Based on this vision, our university launched the Global Studies Institute a few weeks ago. This new entity, this new institute will offer new types of teaching on cross-cutting global issues. Not just international trade or transboundary financial flows. The stakes are much broader and they involve human rights. These skills were spread over several faculties. And now the Institute will firmly place Geneva on the map, the research map, and we'll search for new forms of governance around the world at state, city, or regional level. How can a university, a modest university such as ours in a country which is a modest country, hope to have any influence on the complex realities of our world, on issues which are so broad as human rights? Here again, our institution must play a role in transmitting knowledge in its research and training, but also as an agora in the primary meaning of the term, where dialogue is established, opinions are compared, knowledge comes together, individuals converge to debate on values and ideas which are not necessarily the same. The events organized for the Human Rights Week are right along the lines of our commitment to do this. Our institution is a place of thought. It should also become a place of action. Here in Geneva, the city of international diplomacy and cradle of our university, we need to work to begin to act at international level. Think locally, act globally. Maybe I've changed the sentence, but it does reflect my personal conviction about the responsibilities that fall to us, which are go far beyond our academic duties. And I would especially like to mention areas such as education, the right to education and health, which are the first to go out the window when human rights are flouted. I agree with the words of our federal counselor, Didier Bull-Carter, who wrote in the Tribune de Genève a few days ago, the world is evolving and Switzerland should be properly positioned to resolve global challenges. Geneva is the image and influence of our country in the world. And increasingly, if Switzerland is an international country, it's thanks to Geneva. I couldn't have said it better myself. We have a globalized world full of risks. It's also full of opportunities and challenges which we need to take up. For the University of Geneva, the globalization of planet Earth followed the globalization of planet science. We've been involved in that for a long time. And so we are partners in networks such as the League of the 20 Best Research Universities in Europe. But this hasn't caused us to forget the importance of more local relationships that we've been establishing for the last over 10 years with universities of Neuchâtel and Lausanne, and which enable us to give some 32,000 students a very good training and research program. I would be remiss if I did not mention the campus biotech project, which in collaboration with EPFL and I hope with other partners, naturally the University of Lausanne, to transform the Merck-Serono site and make it into a research center for neuroscience, which will be a globally important center. I would like to thank the Grand Council and the State Council for their commitment in enabling us to take this direction. State Councilor Charles Baer, President of the Grand Council Gabriel Berrier, be assured that you have my gratitude for the support that you have given us over the years. You have become and will be I'm sure for many years to come, true friends of our institution. It is support from people like you that has enabled us to put the best elements of our community at the service of our society, and to hope to be able to claim the universal dimension which should be ours. Thank you very much for your attention.
Monsieur Charles Bert, conseiller.
Mr. Charles Bert, in charge of the Department of Public Education. You have the floor. Rector of the University of Geneva, Vice Rector, President of the Assembly, President of the Grand Council, former Presidents of the Confederation, representatives at the Federal Chamber, the Mayor of Geneva, representatives of the municipal authorities, ambassadors, general councils, and representatives of international organizations, professors, members of the administrative staff, and students. I would like to say what a pleasure it is for me to speak to you at the end of this morning to celebrate yet another DS, which again highlights the importance of the university within our city. The theme that you have chosen this year, globalization and human rights, clearly shows the challenges that we will all have to face in the future. It may be ambitious, but I think that it is within everyone's reach, and this is the stance that you have taken. As you quite rightly said, it is part of your mission and your service to the city that you are committed to this enterprise. I would like to say how much I respect and admire your choice. Choosing to discuss these themes is a way of saying that in Geneva there is a particularly remarkable density of institutions that can think about the links that exist and possibly articulate the two topics. Because there are around 30 international organizations on our territory, around 250 non-governmental organizations, and representatives from 172 countries. At a time when our planet is undergoing what we call a globalization process, even though it may not have the same meaning to everyone, this entails a whole series of consequences: migratory flows, urbanization, environmental issues, access to resources, and strategic conflicts, which of course make us rethink our vision of the planet and its future. I would like to say very modestly that Geneva is much more deeply involved in this choice, and I would like to pay tribute to you for choosing this theme. I know that the Graduate School of Development Studies worked with the authorities on these questions, also with the participation of various representatives from civil society and the indispensable support from the federal authorities. By doing this, you've been able to underscore a point which is central to us, an important point for globalization and human rights. The essential role that training, education, and research can play. Knowledge sharing is a way of affecting the way in which we envision the various sectors that have been defined over time. If you take a project like the Château de Pont project, I think it will manage to bring together university and other players to make a contribution to thinking the world. And this very solemn occasion, the DS, I would like to say how impressed I am by the many diverse projects organized by the university. I've been talking about a changing university landscape in Switzerland, the creation of a federal department, for example, which brings together all training sectors, the ever-growing partnerships on a national, regional, and international level, whether it's in Europe or elsewhere around the world. I think that this is a true change of paradigm in our work. And in Geneva, things have greatly changed as well. The Declaration of Intent in 2005 that we launched with 3 federal departments, the Department for Foreign Affairs, the Department for Defense, and the Interior Department, put forward a concept of a hub for international relations. I think that this was a groundbreaking decision, and I think that it has now been enshrined in the Global Institute, which has just been created within the university. I think it is the sign of indispensable cooperation between the institutes of our university to reach its very ambitious goals. I've seen that through these many evolutions, these many changes, and here I'm thinking about the changes in the legal framework, the way in which the university has taken the opportunity of the financial crisis to rethink the way in which it works, to change its horizons. I think that in these times of change, it is an excellent time for me to express all my gratitude. And to end, I would like to say how much those of you who have signed the Cooperation Convention can play an important role. Maintain the mission universalis. Work on the projects together. I'm not asking you to become schizophrenic, but try to adapt our university to what is at stake in the current world. It's so important to be able to cooperate on a regional level. And let's not forget how important it is to work hand in hand with graduate institutes as well, whether it's a HEID or HES, who have greatly evolved over the past few years, and let's not forget that they were only created 15 years ago. So very recently, I would like to say that all of this collaboration is extremely enriching. I've had the pleasure of discovering many dimensions of this collaboration. You talked about the biotech, which will be created on the site of Merck Serono. It will teach us to work with different private funds, which we've rarely had the possibility to do so far, which once again underscores the importance of what is at stake here. Applied research will be taking on whole new dimensions. There will also be cooperation between high-level institutes, the École Polytechnique de Lausanne, for example, and the University of Lausanne and HES, indispensable partners. There are so many projects, and I would be delighted also to be able to undertake CMU 5 and 6, which will be a consecration of a 10-year project within the department, and 2 very recent events to show you the diversity of the University of Geneva. I wanted to say how satisfied and awestruck I was to see the scientific project of solar. They had the boldness to choose to navigate at sea as part of one of the most noble scientific projects, and in zone, which reminds me that when working on refugee camps, for example, you can also develop greater ideas, broader ideas that can be at the service of everyone else, and in this case through interpretation, to make sure that all people in zones of conflict can have access to our knowledge. I would like to thank the university, and I would like to stress how important it is that over the next few years and the next few legislatures we give all the importance that it deserves to the University of Geneva. Thank you.
Monsieur le conseiller d'État,
As State Councillor, on behalf of the University, I would like to extend all our deepest thanks for your kind words, and on a more personal note, I would like to thank you for your support, your great support over the past few years. I now suggest that we move on to the awarding of the doctorate honoris causa to 4 very important personalities. I would now like to give the floor to one of our vice deans, the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine. Professor Julio Frank, could you please join me here on the stage to receive your honorary degree? Julio Frank, you are the Dean of the Harvard School of Public Health, where you are also a professor. You cannot reach a position like that in one of the most prestigious universities in the world by accident. Over the years, you have appeared as one of the most eminent authorities in the area of global health. Your career started in Mexico, your native country, where you did your medical studies at the national universities. Then you headed to the United States, where you received a master's in public health and a PhD in medical organization and sociology from the University of Michigan. When you went back to Mexico, you took charge of the Center for Research in Public Health before you became the Director General of the National Institute for Public Health. You then came to Geneva for the first time. You became Executive Director of the Evidence and Information for Polity department at WHO. You published a report on health in the world in 2000, a groundbreaking report, because for the first time it placed the assessment of performance of health systems at the heart of political and research agendas. In 2000, you became the Minister of Health in Mexico, and for 6 years you undertook an in-depth reform of the health system by introducing a national program for health insurance, the Seguro Popular, which gave access to health services to several million Mexicans. By taking a systemic approach, you very quickly understood that health systems are complex and dynamic, and then they need integrated approach to be able to better use its resources. In 2008, you received the Clinton Global Citizen Award for changing the way in which practitioners and political decision makers over the world think of health. As an iconic figure of global health, you've combined scientific rigor, the passion of a human rights activist, and the eloquence of a diplomat. And you are a man of action, of change, and commitment. Your appointment to Harvard represents the culmination of an extremely rich career, during which you've altered the functions of health organizations, whether they're public, private, national, or international. You are very familiar with Geneva. In 2006, you gave us the honor of taking part in the first edition of the Geneva Health Forum. At the time, we were creating a new Institute for Global Health. And who better than you can tackle the major challenges of this globalized world in the area of health for everyone? Therefore, we were particularly proud, Mr. Frank, to award you with this doctorate honoris causa of the University of Geneva. You will be receiving it from our rector, Jean-Dominique Vassali.
J'ai le plaisir de...
It is now my pleasure to call upon Mr. Tullio Di Mauro, recipient of an honorary degree 2013. Tullio Di Mauro, dear Professor, throughout your career you have endeavored to dedicate your scientific activities to the common good. So what is more natural today than a public institution like ours awarding you a doctorate honoris causa? If I were to affirm that the social mind exists, all I would have to do is present the impressive collection of your work that covers over 60 years of research in linguistics, both fundamental and applied to the world of education that you have contributed to. The University of Geneva would like to remind you of some of your founding pieces, Storia linguistica dell'Italia inuta, Introduzione alla semantica, and especially in 1967, the Italian translation of Ferdinand de Saussure's class on general linguistics. Your links with the representatives of the Geneva Saussurean School are clear to everyone. You've become a friend of that institution. You could have just kept to your position as an Indo-European linguist, work on classic and Roman languages, and be recognized as one of the great semiologists of the 20th century. But that wasn't enough for you. You decided to focus your work on the educational system. In 1975, your fundamental contribution to the 10 theses for linguistic education influenced the change in orientation of Italian language programs. You directed many scientific journals, but one of the publications that you feel the strongest about is Duo Parole, 2 words, a monthly review, specially designed for children with cognitive disabilities, which is still published today. In 2000, you were asked to become part of the Italian government as Minister of Universities, but you chose a much more difficult position, Minister of Public Education. You said, without better schools, we have no chance of improving universities. It is therefore in that spirit that you became involved in a reform of teaching programs in Italian schools, which is still, which exists today. Summarizing a career such as yours is impossible, but I must mention the 50 or so years of knowledge sharing that you have given us, and many of your students have followed in your footsteps. I know that when you gave up the keys to your office at the University of Rome, you were concerned that that no one would follow in your footsteps. But I hope that the title of Doctor Honoris Causa of the University of Geneva that you're receiving today will contribute to increasing your legacy. And Jean-Dominique Vassili, our rector, will now give you your award.
Cher André Vaucher.
Dear André Vaucher, please come and join me. As founder of our academy, Jean Calvin said he wasn't particularly interested in medieval sainthood. In fact, he thought that cult of saints was a papal superstition, and he greatly criticized his contemporaries' interest in relics. However, the concept of sainthood is part of history and therefore deserves to be the subject of scientific studies. And you, André Vaucher, have clearly and spectacularly demonstrated that. In the history of sainthood, there's a pre-1981 period when you published Sainthood in the Later Middle Ages, and then a post-1981 period. Canonization procedures in the past seem to be part of a stereotypical literary genre and didn't seem to have any historical value. But since your publication, I don't think anyone can deny the historical value of these representations. Do you canonize clerics or seculars, nobles or poor men, men or women? And after having read your book, this could be said about medieval society. Tell me what your saints are, and I'll tell you who you are. I think you'll forgive me for not trying to summarize the 40 or so books that you have written or supervised over the many years in 2 minutes, but I must point out to your contribution to our understanding of Francis of Assisi and our knowledge of the dissident or prophetic movements in the Middle Ages. Some historians only write for their fellow historians, which is already a good thing, but there are others, including you, who devote at least part of their efforts to giving the public access to scientific works. You directed or co-directed several of these editorial enterprises that are present in many libraries around the world. First and foremost, the history of Christianity, which is great both in terms of quantity, 14 volumes, and quality. When I heard that in a month in Bern you would be receiving the prestigious Balzan Award, I think I better understand the strange parable of the talents in the Gospel, which ends with these words: "To he who has all shall be given, but to he who has nothing, all shall be taken. From he who has nothing, all shall be taken." May your talents, and I mean your talents as a researcher, be recognized today. By awarding you the title of Doctor Honoris Causa, the University of Geneva, on the proposal of its Faculty of Theology, has honored the abundance of your work as a historian, and we would like to thank you for sharing your knowledge through your publications and for your great human and intellectual generosity. Dear André de Vauchet, our rector will now be awarding you your honorary degree.
Cher Olga Kosmidou.
Dear Olga Kosmidou, please come and join me to receive your honorary degree. Olga Kosmidou, you are Director General of Interpretation and Conferences at the European Parliament at the highest level within the Union's institutions. In a multicultural and multilingual Europe, it's a fundamental responsibility, a prestigious position, the crowning accomplishment of an exemplary career as an interpreter and translator, first in your native country, Greece, and from 1994 at the European Parliament. A career which is based on two strong convictions. First of all, that quality interpretation should be based on extensive academic training, striving for excellence. This is why you've always fought to enhance relations between universities and interpretation services. You are the co-founder of the EMCI, a network of European universities for postgraduate training of interpreters. In fact, this network was for a long time run by the Faculty of Translation and Interpretation at the University of Geneva. And your commitment isn't limited to Europe. You co-founded HINTS, a network of chief interpreters for international coordination, which brings together European institutions, the United Nations, and states. Moreover, you are a member of the board of INZONE, an initiative of our interpretation department within the University of Geneva and supported by the University of Geneva. Organizations that work in zones of conflicts are often hindered by linguistic barriers, and INZONE intends to train interpreters in the field through e-learning technologies. And this is your second strong belief. the fundamental link that exists between human rights activism and defense and quality interpretation. This is why you have strongly fought for multilingualism in Europe as a democratic principle. You say that all citizens of the Union should enjoy the same privileges. Immigrants should have access to social services and fair procedures, which implies that they should be able to speak their own language. By insisting on multilingualism, which means so much to Switzerland, led to you being awarded the Légion d'honneur from the French state. Olga Cosmidou, you have had very close links with the University of Geneva since the 70s, when you studied conference interpreting in our faculty. We are therefore particularly happy to award you with this honorary degree, which for us is a way of expressing our gratitude and your esteem to a person who has reached the pinnacle of her profession. And Jean-Dominique Vassalli will be giving you your degree.
Après, mesdames et messieurs, les...
Ladies and gentlemen, after the sweet notes that opened this ceremony, we will now hear the crashing waves of the Atlantic Ocean. What better to illustrate the impact of the opening up of knowledge and university studies to the outside world. This is a human scale adventure. And to illustrate this, we'll be talking about the Deepwater Planet Solar Expedition. We needed, of course, an exceptional crew to undertake this, so I would like to extend my congratulations to all the people who have taken part in this. Martin Beniston, Jean-Pierre Wolf, to name but a few, as well as the many members of the navigation and scientific teams who accompanied them. They undertook what may have felt like a crazy adventure, but it was also a fascinating one. And of course, we needed a captain, an exceptional captain at the helm of this expedition. And I would particularly like to thank Gérard Dabovin, who, after having crossed the Atlantic Ocean alone in a rowing boat, accepted to be accompanied by a crew and was the leader of their destiny. Please join me aboard this podium and take us down the Gulf Stream.
Monsieur le
Rector, ladies and gentlemen, the Planet Solar Deepwater Expedition, which has just completed after almost 6 months of navigation, arose from a collaboration between the University of Geneva and the Planet Solar SA company. The Swiss solar boat, Terranor Planet Solar, met its challenge in 2012 of a round-the-world sail using only solar energy, and was looking for a second life. Very quickly, we agreed that it would be good to use the boat as a platform for scientific measurement, and the Deepwater project rapidly took shape before the end of 2012, bringing together scientific skills that are found here in our university, the Applied Physics Department, the Forel Institute for Aquatic Sciences, the Environmental Sciences Institute. We devised a program of measurement which is at the interface between the ocean and the atmosphere along the entire length of the Gulf Stream, the famous warm current in the North Atlantic, which is one of the great regulators of our climate. The idea was to deepen, first of all, our knowledge about the role of microorganisms living in the surface waters of the ocean in climate regulation, and also to take measurements with novel instruments based on chemical and biological microparticles released by the ocean, and which play an important role, but a role which we don't know a lot about in the climate system. Above and beyond its scientific experience, Planet Solar Deepwater gave us a chance to talk about the environment and the climate, about new technology, about renewable energy, which is the first step to a solution to the climate issue. The Press and Information Service of the University did a remarkable job of educating the media and the public about fundamental environmental and societal issues. The media and the public were very enthusiastic at all stops on both sides of the Atlantic, and in fact it was a success that went far beyond our expectations. Deepwater was an extraordinary human adventure which enabled young scientists and young sailors not only to fraternize but also to become interested in each other's fields and to take part in a unique expedition. Indeed, how can one remain unmoved when during one and the same expedition one finds oneself in front of the Statue of Liberty in New York, Tower Bridge in London, and the Eiffel Tower in Paris? So I would like to give a very warm of thanks to our scientists and the Rector's Office that supported our project with enthusiasm, our press service for the exciting events that took place during our expedition, our friends at Planet Solar SA, and the Stroher family, owners of the boat, who believed in this project. Last but not least, I would like to thank the crew, without whom none of this would have been possible. And it's now a great pleasure to hand over to Captain Gérard d'Abbeville. As the rector mentioned, Gérard is the first man to have crossed the Atlantic in a rowboat, and then he crossed the Pacific. Happily, we did not need his skills as a rower during our expedition, but I will now give him the mic so that he can give us his version of the Deepwater expedition in just a few words. Thank you for your attention, and I hope I'll see you again in 2014.
Merci.
Thank you, Rector. Thank you, Martin. Dear Martin, for bringing up some of my past feats. But unfortunately, some time ago I realized that my own personal energy was not necessarily renewable and that I needed a major partner, in other words, the sun, in order to continue. And this is what led me to become the captain of this extraordinary boat, Planet Solar, with a 20,000 kilometer voyage in the North Atlantic over 6 months, stopping in prestigious areas such as Miami, New York, Boston, Halifax, London, and Paris. But more importantly, between these stops, we did some very exciting work because, of course, we were the support team for the Deepwater expedition. This gave high added value to our journey. For the crew, I have to say it was really a great pleasure. First, we had to prepare the boat, adapt it to the specific conditions that the expedition needed, adapt the instruments, and make room for the measurement instruments on board. Following that, from Miami on, we had to do our best to reconcile interests that were somewhat conflicting. The scientists wanted to go here and do more measuring, and the crew said, well, listen, is that really reasonable? But I have to say that things went very smoothly, and if there's one thing in particular I'm very happy about, it is the very good atmosphere on the ship between the sailors and the scientists. Both groups became very interested in the work of the other. And then when we stopped and we had the media events, we were able to talk about the boat and about renewable energies, but also about the Deepwater expedition, obviously, and its aims. So I would like to take advantage of this moment to thank the scientists, the students who came with us. Some of them were a bit seasick, and despite that, they worked very hard, gave it their all. All of them supported happily bore with the difficulties of the voyage and the bad temper of the captain. I know that this will remain a fantastic memory with respect to the crew. They all ring me once in a while and say, when are we going to get the findings of the studies? Because they're very interested in the work, the part of the work that took place on board. I would like to conclude by inviting you to look at a few pictures that we brought back with us to land at the end of the expedition.
Merci, cher.
Thank you, Gérard, for having shared your expedition with us for a few moments. I have to confess that it's great to be a rector, but I am frustrated sometimes. One of my personal frustrations, I love sailing, I love the ocean. The rector has to get off the boat to meet other rectors in the stopovers, and the rector the rector only appears at the stopovers, and I didn't really get to sail. So keep this in mind for your next expedition. You need to tweak that a little bit.
Mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen, it was difficult for this Deus Academicus on such a lofty topic as globalization and human rights to find figures that live up to these challenges. But there's a bigger challenge, which is that we wanted to inaugurate a new medal, the Medal for Innovation. And we needed to find a laureate who had both creativity and inventivity in serving human rights. And we wanted two dimensions to be highlighted on this occasion, education and health, because they are at the heart of the concerns of many of our members of the university. For the education field, we found the ideal recipient, Madame Daphne Koller, professor in the computer science department at Stanford University and co-founder of the online education platform Coursera, and we'll hear from her in a moment. A member of our university shares some of Daphne Koller's ambitions and goals. Her project involves establishing a center for interpretation in conflict zones, and she has built up many skills in her years at the Faculty for Translation and Interpretation, and is very well versed in new information and communications tools. Madame Barbara Musa-Merzer, I would like to ask you to come to the stage and present the InZone project established by yourself within the Faculty of Translation and Interpretation, and you can also pronounce the laudatio of our recipient of the Medal for Innovation 2013. Thank you. Thank you very much for that introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, change and conflict resolution and also consolidation of peace must begin with attacking the root causes of hostility. This change must rely on negotiation and mediation, and this means that marginalized groups must be able to express themselves and state their interests. Thus, parties must be in a position to say what are their values, their social, cultural, and political norms in order to overcome the mistrust that underlies outbreaks of violence that in turn are exasperated by the latter. And it's through language that human beings express themselves. But in fragile contexts in which humanitarian personnel are involved, the ability of language to express emotions clearly is often impeded by the use of a dominant language, the language of power struggle, the language of the strongest, if there are no neutral interpreters able to aid multilingual communication. And thus, it's sometimes human rights, humanitarian law, and fundamental rights of the most vulnerable that are eroded because of this lack of communication. InZone, the Center for Interpretation in Conflict Zones, is working to train interpreters in the field, wherever they are. Kabul, Khartoum, Kassala, in the refugee camps in Dadaab or Kakuma. InZone, working with humanitarian organizations, has begun to train humanitarian interpreters so that they can develop their professional skills and strengthen the ethical dimension in the practice of their profession under international humanitarian law. One of our student interpreters in Afghanistan confessed, despite the explosions all around me, I can now go on with my training. Building on our expertise in learning technologies, InZone has become involved in tertiary education in fragile contexts, taking into account not only the multiple problems in these contexts, but also the diversity of intellectual cultures that reigns there. Our initiatives are mainly aimed at offering hybrid teaching in the classroom and distance training using virtual teaching, peer teaching in the north and the south. The SDC has set out a three-pronged strategy for education: quality, equity, and access to education, education and training, and education and fragility. With 15 million refugees at the end of 2012, ladies and gentlemen, there can be no doubt as to the urgency of providing education in fragile contexts. The opening of an InZone office at the United Nations office in Nairobi is a symbol for the new era of knowledge societies, the cross-fertilization of ideas, a closer collaboration between those who are involved in producing knowledge and those who build bridges between knowledge and humanity, moving between realities, the often difficult realities of the field, and intellectual spheres. InZone wants to show that the university is not limited to intellectual pursuits, that it can come out of its ivory tower and meet the field, meet the people on the ground, but that it can also work closely with international organization experts, stakeholders in the field, and the recipients of aid, and re-inject the results of these collaborations into innovative education programs which will make a significant contribution to progress on the Millennium Development Goals and the post-2015 goals. It is precisely this dimension of innovation in the field of education that we are for which we are awarding Daphne Koller. We're going to award the Medal for Innovation for the first time in the history of our university. This will be a symbolic handing over because the laureate is unfortunately not with us. The University of Geneva has a mission to honor exceptional figures. Daphne Koller is without any doubt exceptional. I will not even talk about her beginnings as an extremely gifted pupil or her academic work that led her to University of Stanford as a professor. Daphne Koller excels first and foremost in fulfilling a vision, the vision of democratic knowledge available to the maximum number of people, with an opportunity currently for over 1 million learners around the globe to have access to quality teaching, which is free from societal, temporal, and spatial constraints. The mind is not a vessel to be filled, but a fire to be kindled, she says, borrowing these words from Plutarch. This was Daphne Koller's motto when she decided to overturn the conventional scheme of education in which professors and students were condemned to share the same physical space, the same scheme that reduced the transmission of knowledge to the four walls of a classroom. Daphne Koller's vision became a reality in Coursera, the distance teaching platform that over 80 universities are taking part in, including the University of Geneva, with 4 courses from fields of study as varied as astrophysics, economic and social science, theology, and medicine. Daphne Koller's desire to share did not wait for the digital revolution to materialize. Her colleagues at Stanford remember her determination to revamp academic traditions and habits, which all too often give precedence to lectures. The revolution she spearheaded at Stanford led to a model of reverse education, where the learner receives general distance teaching and then can get personalized support from his or her teacher on campus. In this sense, Daphne Koller is a pioneer for Pedagogy 2.0, a more dynamic, more direct model that puts the learner back on center stage. It is for her exceptional human and scientific qualities that we are proud to award the Medal for Innovation of the University of Geneva to Daphne Koller. It is being awarded today for the first time. No other figure could better embody the values that this new award represents. Thank you for giving this medal to Daphne Koller. We're now going to listen to Madame Koller, who was unable to be with us, but who is an emblematic figure of online teaching. Unfortunately, the interpreters cannot hear Mr. Vasili very well because he's moved away from the microphone. We do apologize. She's going to now address you from San Francisco.
Bonjour, je suis très honorée d'accepter cette médaille d'innovation de l'Université de Genève et merci beaucoup pour votre patience avec la technologie. The rest of this talk will be in English, and I'll tell you about how the work we've been doing at Coursera can help bring education from some of the best universities freely available to everyone. The revolution started in Stanford University in the fall of 2011, where, based on work that we've been doing for a number of years, we took some 3 courses in computer science and put them out for everyone in the world to take for free. We expected an enrollment of a few thousand students, but within a matter of weeks, each of those courses had an enrollment of 100,000 students or more. We realized at that point that we were at a moment in history where we had the opportunity to take an educational experience that had been available only to a tiny handful of privileged students and bring it to everyone around the world with an internet connection at effectively a zero marginal cost per student. We launched this effort officially in April of 2012 with 4 universities, 37 courses, and 200,000 legacy students from the Stanford courses. Now, about 20 months later, we have close to 5 million students from every country around the world. We have over 450 courses from 88 university partners. Let's talk a little bit about each of these. These are the universities that offer courses via Coursera. You can see on the left some of the best universities from the United States, including places like Caltech, Duke, Yale, Columbia, and of course Stanford, Michigan, Penn, and Princeton, who are our founding partners. And on the right you see some universities from around the world, including the best universities in their countries from Europe, Asia, Australia, and Latin America. Overall, we have 35 of the top 60 universities worldwide, including the top universities in 15 different countries. The courses that we offer started in computer science, but now they're considerably broader. We now have courses across the range of disciplines, in philosophy, in art, in business, music, science, astronomy, and many, many others. One category of courses that we're particularly proud of is that of teacher training, where we're aiming to try and help fix the fact that the problem in education doesn't usually start in higher ed. It often starts much earlier. And while we don't think we have the right educational experience to teach a 7-year-old how to read, if we can help make teachers better, they can help teach our children better as well. And maybe we can help solve the 2 million teacher shortage that exists in many parts of the world. Let's talk a little bit about what these courses are like. These courses are not just passive video content. In addition to video, there is a whole range of homework that is auto-graded by the computer. Here, for example, is a course from Georgia Tech where the students actually have a lab that they can do in their own surroundings using items that they have in their own environment, and using video technology the instructor constructed, one can grade whether they did their lab work correctly. We also, by exploiting peer grading, where students critically assess each other's work using criteria that are designed by the instructor, we can build into these courses experiential learning, including essays, artwork, music, and design, as you can see in this example here of this design course from the Wharton Business School at the University of Pennsylvania. And therefore, we're able to considerably transcend the more quantitative courses and also be able to assess work that is creative and out of the box. And the final component of the student experience on these courses is that of community. One thing that just doesn't scale is an instructor that has to interface with tens of thousands of students. Even hundreds is challenging. So we've replaced that with peer-to-peer interaction, where students ask questions and answer questions posed by other students. And that many-to-many interaction is in many ways richer and more detailed than what a single instructor could do, even in a small class. One aspect of community is that it also occurs not just in the virtual setting, but also physically. I'd like to highlight one of those examples that occurred in Ohio here in the United States, where a group of people who are not among life's most fortunate got together to take a Coursera class together. This is a group of women, primarily in their 40s and 50s, from minority backgrounds. Only one of them has a college education. Most of them are either unemployed or employed in low-paying jobs. They got together, they took an entrepreneurship class from a top business school here in the United States. And the really remarkable part of this is, of the 10 who started the course, 9 completed, and 6 of them passed an MBA-level final exam, demonstrating the power of high-quality content combined with a physical community. We believe that this technology provides us with the capability to provide everyone around the world with an internet connection, with an education. We're very proud of the fact that only 1/3 of our students are in the United States, another 28% are in Europe, but also that 40% of the students on the Coursera platform are in the developing world, in many cases in places where they have no access to a high-quality educational experience. So I'd like to end this talk by talking a little bit about the access that this kind of technology provides, and coming back to the students whose lives can be transformed by access to this technology. So here's Marvin from Cameroon. Marvin works in the regional delegation of public health, and he uses these courses to improve the quality of health in his region. He says, I propose new health strategies to medical officers and help them combine medicine and information technology. Cameroon has many challenges in regards to health-related matters, and this course served as a foundation to help me improve them. This is Amanda from Dominica. She says, Coursera makes studying easier for me. I could sit at home and learn like I'm at school. No distraction, just me, my headphones, and my books. Everything is clear. The video lectures are just amazing. I could earn certificates and do quizzes to improve my learning without spending a dime to get to my local school. It helps me a lot since my mom is in the hospital, and financially, I cannot afford to attend school. Here's Jose from the Philippines. Jose took the class on experimental genome science. The course was very, very challenging. I had to do some of the coursework during lunch at work. But then I got an interview for a job I really desire, and I mentioned that I was taking the experimental genome science course. Now I have a new job evaluating genomic research proposals. Funny how that works. Paola from Greece. Not a developing country, but one where there are significant economic challenges in the population. She says the Coursera initiative made a 360-degree impact, not only on my professional life, but also in my social, cognitive, metacognitive, and emotional development too. I can get the most authoritative and best delivered cognitive and strategic tools to start my own business, despite my age. Coursera is a truly global democratic experience. True example of how to realize the principle of equal. To me, the Coursera initiative should get the Nobel Prize for Peace. And then finally, this one came just a few days ago, and I was deeply touched by this one. The title of the post, it was a forum post, is Coursera Saved My Life, and let me read it. 2 years ago, I felt incredibly miserable. I'm coming from a traditional family, so I married young, and all my life I was either pregnant, breastfeeding, or both. I knew that I'm talented, but all I had in life was cleaning, feeding, working part-time. I felt that all my talents and joy are buried deeply in the ground. I was deeply depressed. There was a moment when I thought that my family would be better off without me, and I tried to kill myself. But we, humans, are very tenacious of life, and I survived. At that time, I found Coursera. My first course, called The Game Theory, expelled the depression and desire to die once and forever. I feel happy and I enjoy my life and my family much more. In the last 2 years, I have taken about 40 courses. I'm addicted and I'm in love with online learning. Coursera breathes life into me. It gave me hope. I know that when my kids will grow up in 10 to 15 years, I will leave everything and go to Oxford. I dream about it. As Charles Dickens once said, suffering has been stronger than all other teaching and has taught me to understand what your heart used to be. I've been bent and broken, but I hope into a better shape. I would like to end this talk with one other quote, not from Charles Dickens, but from New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman. When he first wrote about this effort back in May 2012, right after we launched, Thomas Friedman described this effort better than anyone else could have done before or since. He said that big breakthroughs are what happen when what is suddenly possible meets what is desperately necessary. Thank you very much.
Mesdames et messieurs, merci pour vos applaudissements.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the applause. We'll try to relay it online to Mrs. Kohler. Maybe I should say that these courses are well worth looking into. There are 3 vice rectors, and one of them has been following these courses, and from what I've heard, they're not easy. So just bear that in mind. Of course, ladies and gentlemen, it wouldn't have been possible to disregard the dimension of health in Dies Academicus on globalization and human rights, and not because of my background, more for my personal beliefs that I wanted to raise this. It is of capital importance now and will be even more so in the future. I'm therefore particularly happy to give the floor to the person who will be relaying this message, new Doctor Honoris Causa, Mr. Julio Frank.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Recteur.
Good morning, Rector, dear colleagues. It's a great honor for me to be here in this institution of excellence. I would like to thank you, but I will be pursuing my presentation in English.
First of all, I would like to thank the University of Geneva, especially Rector Jean-Dominique Vasali and Dean Henri Bonnemont, for this unexpected distinction. It is a source of enormous satisfaction for me to receive an honorary degree from such a prestigious academic institution based in one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and probably the most emblematic in terms both of health and human rights, the topic of my remarks today. I had the privilege of living in Geneva for 2.5 years in the late 1990s when I worked at the World Health Organization under the inspiring leadership of Gro Harlem Brundtland. Geneva is a symbol of the progress we have achieved in the realms of health and human rights. As you well know, it is home to the main global health institutions, the depositary of the Geneva Conventions, launching site of the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, and seat of the United Nations Human Rights Council. There is probably no better place than this university to discuss the relationship between globalization, health, and human rights. This is also an opportune time to do so. After many years in the field, I am convinced that we are in the midst of a new global health era, which poses additional challenges, but also offers fresh opportunities. 3 circumstances make this moment unique for global health. First, during the past decade, health has been increasingly recognized as a key element of global security, sustainable economic growth, effective governance, and human rights promotion. health no longer falls solely in the ambit of specialists, but is the concern of multiple areas of government, as well as an expanding field for private sector activity and civil society engagement. Second, the growing recognition of the importance of health has been associated with an extraordinary expansion of development assistance for health, which almost tripled during the first decade of the 21st century. It has also led to the creation of a whole set of new forms of organization, to the point that there are now more than 170 multilateral agencies and partnerships active in health. The most important ones among them are located here in Geneva, which continues to play its historical role as the epicenter of global health. Third, like never before, we are all keenly aware of our deep interdependence in health matters, which means that no single actor, not even the most powerful government or corporation, is single-handedly able to address all the health threats that affect it. The main message of my remarks today is straightforward. If we are to meet the challenges and reap the opportunities of an increasingly interdependent world, we need to renew global cooperation in health. In this renewal process, the protection and promotion of human rights play an absolutely critical role. Countries at all levels of economic development and with all types of political systems have embarked on a common search for better ways of organizing and financing their health systems. The common quest for universal health coverage is predicated on the principle that effective access to high-quality health services with financial protection for all should not be seen as a market transaction or a benefit of employment, but as a human right. Every health system reflects a series of ethical assumptions. Consciously or unconsciously, explicitly or implicitly, these assumptions are expressed in the distribution of healthcare benefits and in the organization of institutions. Alongside the formulation of technical proposals and political strategies, every attempt to reform the health system should begin by asking what values it should promote. In this way, the ethical foundation of reform proposals can be made transparent. For 6 years, I had the privilege of leading a major reform effort in Mexico, which laid the foundation for the achievement of universal coverage. Rather than examining the technical aspects of this reform, about which more than 100 academic articles have been written, what I would like to underscore is that the Mexican reform was formulated and promoted on the basis of a set of explicit values. This ethical framework was derived from the notion that, as I mentioned before, healthcare is not a commodity or a privilege, but a social right. Specifically, the reform was based on the adoption of 5 values: social inclusion, equality of opportunity, financial justice, individual autonomy, and social responsibility. These values created the ethical drive to build the political consensus that is an indispensable ingredient for successful reform. Thus, a new law established an innovative scheme called Seguro Popular, which covers an explicit set of entitlements for the 52 million Mexicans, most of them poor, who had previously been excluded from the benefits of social insurance because they were self-employed, unemployed, or altogether out of the labor market. According to Brachet, the transformation of health into a real social right requires, above everything, the definition of a set of health interventions that all persons, regardless of their labor or socioeconomic status, should receive and can legally demand. In this spirit, the new law in Mexico stipulates the budgetary provisions to guarantee access to a comprehensive package of benefits at an adequate level of quality. Quality is further defined to include not only the technical aspects of care, but also the protection of a set of rights associated with the process of care, including confidentiality, participation in therapeutic decisions, informed consent, and respect for the dignity of patients. The law also introduces a transparent and participatory process so that benefits can be expanded progressively and updated annually on the basis of changes in the epidemiological profile and the availability of resources. What are the global implications of the use of a human rights framework to guide national policy design and implementation? The most important point for the purpose of my remarks today is that social rights belong to the category of second-generation human rights, which are by definition rights that everybody possesses as a member of the human race. Therefore, the struggle to extend social rights transcends local legislations and the traditional notion of citizenship. This means that the demand for health care can come from anybody and not only from citizens of a particular country. This issue is particularly relevant given the high level of migration, which is a key driver of global interdependence. The implications of a rights-based approach are clear. It is unethical to limit access to health services on the basis of migratory, legal, or labor status of any person. The human nature of the right to health care also implies that support from this claim can come from anywhere in the world. This opens an enormous field of action for international advocacy and global solidarity. In our turbulent world, health remains as one of the few truly universal aspirations. It therefore offers a concrete opportunity to build the foundations of a global society. The idea of a global society is based on the ethic of human rights and the logic of health interdependence. It is consistent with the conventional principles of sovereignty that still underpin the political organization of the current world order. Yet, it recognizes that because of growing interdependence, states need to share their sovereignty in order to mobilize international collective action to face common threats and pursue shared goals. The multilateral system is precisely the vehicle to do so. At the same time, the idea of a global society implies that individuals and the various organizations they form, whether governmental agencies, civil society entities, firms, foundations, universities, or other actors, accept to share the risks, rights, and duties related to protecting and promoting the health of every member of this society. While the notion of a global society may seem somewhat utopian, it is partly based on the reality of the speed with which ideas and ideals spread across borders. The growing density of global interactions raises new possibilities for developing a sense of solidarity among individuals and societies in far-flung corners of the world. The recent increase in political attention and financing for improving the health of the world's poorest people signals that global solidarity and the gradual construction of a world citizenship in health are not merely dreams. By setting global targets for improving maternal and child health and for combating hunger, HIV/AIDS, malaria, and other major diseases, the Millennium Development Goals arguably embodied the aspirations of a nascent global society for a common minimum standard of health to which all people should be entitled as an essential human right. In the absence of a global government, not only now, but for the foreseeable future, the construction of a global society emerges as a feasible alternative to harness interdependence in a world polity where sovereign states coexist with expansive social networks transcending national boundaries. In a world marked not only by deep inequalities, but also by the acceptance of a set of universal human rights, global solidarity becomes the unifying force for building a global society that may redress those inequities and assure the realization of those rights. The concept of a global society should not be construed as a world free of conflict. Rather, as in most national societies, one would expect the global society to be characterized by competing views, values, and interests, and the ongoing political conflict that results. What the notion of a global society does imply is that undergirding such conflicts would be an acceptance of some responsibility for the health of others as members of the same society. In other words, a shared commitment to realizing health as a human right based on the recognition of our common humanity. In this spirit, let me end by quoting the words of the renowned historian and politician Michel Ignatieff, who wrote the following words in his book, The Rights Revolution. And I quote, "Rights are something more than dry legalistic phrases, because they represent our attempt to give legal meaning to the values we care most about, dignity, equality, and respect. Rights have worked their way deep inside our psyches. Rights are not just instruments of the law. They are expressions of our moral identity as a people. When we see justice done, we feel a deep emotion rise within us. That emotion is the longing to live in a fair world. Rights may be precise, legalistic, and dry, but they are the chief means by which human beings express this longing. And it is important to understand that this longing is a global phenomenon." End of quote. I would add that alongside the longing for justice, rights also generate a sense of belonging, since they point to our common identity as members of the human race. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to address this splendid audience and for distinguishing me with an honorary degree that I will cherish forever. Merci beaucoup.
Many thanks, Julio Frank, for sharing with us your vision. I believe it is shared by many, but we also know that the challenges are formidable, and so we have to really work to try and transcend them. Le Dies Academicus, c'est l'occasion de rappeler que
Dies Academicus is a good occasion to recall that the University of Geneva has a mission to host exceptional individuals, whether for their past achievements or the promise they hold for the future. I would thus like to call two rectors and then another rector of the university to award the Latsis Prize, the Nessim Habib Award, and finally, last but not least, the University Medal. Mr. Bekov, could you please join me on the stage to receive your award? The purpose of the University of Geneva Latsis Award is for a particularly good thesis and a very promising profile for a young researcher. The award was made in the field of human sciences, humanities in 2012, and now this year in the field of science. Mr. Bekov's thesis was entitled The Protection of Objects Using Fingerprints under the direction of Professor Sviatoslav Voloshinovsky of the Computer Science Department in Geneva. It's rare to see young researchers who adopt a cross-cutting and diversified approach to their field of study at the beginning of their career. Mr. Bekov is one of these. He's an engineer in computer science, trained at the Technological University or College in Delft, his native country, and at a very young age he was interested in mathematics and programming languages. And his Geneva colleagues have said that he has over the years developed a very elegant and solid comprehension of these languages. For Foucault Bekov, theoretical research in the field of pure mathematics and applied research are intertwined and nourish each other. And it is the result of this approach that the award celebrates today. His thesis work is on the use of stochastic calculus to protect physical objects. This line of research included a practical aim from the outset, with a view to fighting counterfeit objects which are present in many areas of our globalized economy. Through modeling and using the false random distribution of particles appearing on the surface of objects, the laureate developed a protection method which makes it possible to render an exact copy of the object. In addition to their intrinsic value, Foucault-Bekov's work is a remarkable example of the value of combining several scientific fields of specialization, in this case, physical microstructures, advanced digital imagery, and stochastic image modeling. In giving him this award, the Prix Latsis jury demonstrates its conviction that this project and its founder have a very bright future. I'm very happy to give you this prize that you have so fully deserved and which you will take with you for your future career at the World Meteorological Organization. This award is presented by Stéphane Berthet, Secretary General of the University of Geneva. Congratulations. It's now a very great pleasure to ask Professor Klaus Wollheim to join us on stage. Dear Klaus, you are one of the world's leading diabetes experts. Your career is intricately linked to the University of Geneva from the beginning. It was Geneva being one of the research hubs on this disease. You arrived in Geneva in 1971. It's a very good place for a young doctor driven by a budding passion for medical research to come. You left your native country of Sweden with your diploma in your pocket, and you came to the very prestigious Clinical Biochemistry Institute founded and directed by Professor Albert Reynolds. The institute was involved in intense and very fruitful research on diabetes and trained an impressive number of specialists in this field who became key figures in experimental diabetes research, and then went out to all continents. It's a club that you are a member of. You studied the physiology of the islets of Langerhans, which are the cells in the pancreas that produce hormones which regulate blood sugar levels. It's a subject which took up a large portion of your scientific career. But as you were working on this with great passion, there was a piece of news that darkened your horizon. You had retinal degeneration, and you would ineluctably lose your sight. This could have put an end to your dreams, but that was not to be, because you have very strong will and very strong support from your wife, Snipe. What followed was an incredible academic career, 300 original publications, which have been quoted or cited over 20,000 times. You laughed in the face of your handicap and opened the eyes of the scientific community to the secrets of cell mechanisms in insulin secretion. And then you passed on the torch, inspiring generations of researchers and training many assistants that came to your laboratory at the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Geneva. And in fact, 15 of your former colleagues are now professors on 4 continents. Today, you're officially retired, but you have not really withdrawn from academic life. You're still active as an honorary professor, and you continue with the same passion to travel the world to give talks and advise young researchers. Your commitment is remarkable in every way, as is your contribution to diabetes research in general and to our institution in particular. They inspire in us sincere admiration and deep gratitude, which we are demonstrating today by awarding you the 2013 Nessim Havif World Award, which will now be presented to you by the Secretary General, Mr. Stéphane Berthet. Dear Ruth Dreyfus, dear university friend, could I please ask you to come up to the stage and join me? Ruth Dreyfus, you don't like to be in the limelight, and you really don't like to be praised in public. You've put me in a very difficult position. Should I do a sort of reverse tribute to your discretion, to how discreet you are? I won't do that, because another quality comes to mind: your perseverance and your determination. In a lovely tribute, Robert Badinter talked about your integrity. That has been your entire career. A straight line, an line, unswerving from your convictions, with a constant commitment to human dignity, against the death penalty, working for the poorest and women. This commitment can be traced back to your childhood. You were born in a Jewish family during the Shoah. Of course, the war spared Switzerland. Switzerland was spared by the war, but you had a general feeling of fear, and also the feeling that nothing is worse than racial hatred and the negation of others, whoever they are, whatever they have done. So it was only logical that you should be attracted by social work. And that brings to mind another of your traits. And once again, I would use the terms of Robert Badinter. It is the constant unity between principles and acts. Working in the field, you were exposed to the dysfunctioning of society, and that led to frustration. You could only work on a case-by-case basis. But what you really wanted to do was carry out broad reform. This frustration led you, which is also logical, to go into politics. You joined the Socialist Party and you became secretary of the Swiss Federal Trade Union Federation. The Swiss Trade Union Federation. But you wanted to work on a larger scale. In 1993, you found the job of your dreams. You were elected to the Federal Council, second woman federal councillor in Switzerland, and in several years later, you became the first woman president of the Confederation. For 10 years, you were in charge of the Department of the Interior, where you reformed, once again, faithful to your convictions, you reformed the social insurance scheme, and you got maternity insurance voted in. Ruth Dreyfus, ladies and gentlemen, she's all about endurance, about keeping to her ideals, but she's also full of humor. You said, keep pushing to all the women when maternity insurance was threatened. But perhaps the best way to illustrate the Dreyfus touch is the way you changed the policy against illegal drugs. At a time when all drug addicts were considered criminals, and only criminals, where the only reaction was criminal penalties, you understood and you led others to understand that the drug addicts in Letten, you called them our children, were paying heavily for an unreasonable policy. So you brought to bear the idea that even addicts who cannot stop taking drugs are entitled to protection for their health and their dignity. And this is an idea which you continue to struggle for on an international scale. For all of these reasons, for all your past action, your present and future action as well, I'm very happy to see you here today. You're a great friend of the University of Geneva, a former student. You maintain close ties with our institution. And a few years ago, you helped us to revamp the legal framework of the university, including the autonomy it needs to develop. But above all, you share with us a vision, a shared vision of human rights. This is why we're particularly proud that our rector is now to award you the medal, the University Medal.
Après un tel cérémonial,
After this ceremony, what would be better than a little opera to close the festivities? We will be accompanied by two members of a surprising ensemble, Comme Copain, that we will be enjoying the final notes of the Dies Academicus. The soprano Lena Durney is at the very beginning of her operatic career and already has an impressive career. She has a master's in interpretation from the Graduate School of Music of Geneva and was selected to take part in a very audacious project, Les Maîtres Chanteurs, which will be presented in November as part of the Wagner Givre Festival in collaboration with the HEM and National Opera in Paris. She will be accompanied on the piano by Guy-François Leuenberger, a virtuoso and a composer, and he received a cultural scholarship from the Lennart's Foundation in 2011 for his work. They will be playing a piece by Henri Duparc.
semblera parler de nous dans tes yeux pleins de tristesse, dans tes yeux alors je boirai tant de baisers et de tendresse que peut-être je guérirai.
Un grand merci.
Many thanks to Liana Durney and Guy-François Leuenberger for contributing to this Academicus 2013. Dear recipients, we'd like to congratulate you once again. I would also like to thank all the people who have greatly contributed to the organization of this day, whether on the stage or backstage. I would like to thank the students' associations who worked with us. I would like to thank all of you in the room